On day 3, he was gone. Meanwhile, a quiet signal sergeant from Fort Gordon that nobody had even noticed was still there. Average build, average height, said almost nothing. And he would go on to pass selection and spend the next 12 years inside the most secretive special operations unit in the United States military. If you think Delta Force is looking for the biggest, fastest, most aggressive soldier in the room, you have it completely backwards, and what they actually screen for will probably surprise you. To understand why the strongest candidate in that class got cut while the quiet one advanced, you need to understand something that most people get wrong about first: Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. The selection process is not designed to find the best soldier. It's designed to find a specific type of person. And the profile they're looking for has more in common with an intelligence analyst than an action hero. Colonel Charlie Beckwith founded Delta Force in 1977 after spending time with the British SAS, and from the very beginning, he built something different. He didn't want a bigger, badder version of the Green Berets or the Rangers. He wanted a unit of quiet professionals who could operate alone, think independently, and disappear into a crowd. The founding DNA of the unit was never about brute force. It was about psychological fitness. But here's what the movies never show you. Before candidates even touch a rucksack, before they take a single step on the Appalachian trails around Fort Liberty, North Carolina, they sit down in a room with a pencil and a stack of psychological evaluation forms. And this is where the selection actually begins. The primary tool is the MMPI, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. This is a 5, 6, 7 question psychological assessment originally developed in the late 1930s and still used across military and law enforcement screening worldwide. It is not a fitness test. It is not an IQ test. It is a personality test, and it measures things that you cannot fake, no matter how tough you are. The MMPI screens for emotional stability under ambiguity. It measures how comfortable you are being alone, how you handle contradictory information, whether you need external validation to feel confident in your decisions. It looks for signs of narcissism, impulsivity, and the need to dominate social situations. And here's the part that would shock anyone who watches military movies for a living. The traits that score well on this evaluation are not the traits of an alpha male. They are almost the opposite. Former Delta operator Eric Haney described this in his book Inside Delta Force. He wrote about how the cadre weren't looking for the hardest chargers or the loudest voices. They were looking for maturity, self-reliance, and what he called a quiet competence that didn't need an audience. Pete Blaber, another former Delta commander, echoed this in The Mission, the Men, and Me. He described the ideal operator as someone who could sit with uncertainty, someone who didn't panic when the plan fell apart, and someone who could make independent decisions without waiting for permission. Think about that for a second. The most elite direct action unit in the US military is specifically screening out the aggressive, dominant personality type. The guy who walks into a room and takes charge immediately. The guy everyone assumes is the natural leader. That guy is often a liability in the environment Delta operates in. And this brings us to the concept that sits at the heart of everything Delta looks for in a candidate. It's called the gray man. The gray man is a term used inside the special operations community, but it has a very specific meaning within Delta. A gray man is someone who can walk through any environment without drawing attention. Average build. Unremarkable appearance. Nothing about them stands out. They don't need to be the center of attention. They don't need credit. They blend in on a crowded street in Baghdad the same way they blend in at a PTA meeting in North Carolina. This is not a weakness. This is the single most operationally valuable trait an operator can possess. Delta's mission set includes everything from hostage rescue to running human intelligence networks in denied territories. An operator who looks like an operator is a dead operator in those environments. The guy with the huge arms and the tactical beard who screams military from 200 meters away is a security risk on a covert mission. The gray man walks right past the checkpoint because nobody looks twice at him. Former operators have described Delta team rooms as the least military-feeling spaces in the entire Army. No one wears rank insignia. First names are standard. The loudest person in the room is usually the newest. The most experienced operators are the quietest. This is by design. This is the culture that selection is built to produce. But the gray man concept is only part of it. The deeper psychological trait that Delta is screening for, the one that separates the candidates who make it from those who don't, is something psychologists call tolerance for ambiguity. During selection, candidates are given a set of coordinates, a rucksack, a map, and a compass. They're told to move. They're not told how far. They're not told how long. They're not told what the standard is. When they arrive at a checkpoint, the cadre member looks at them, writes something on a clipboard, and says nothing. No feedback, no encouragement, no criticism, just silence. Then they give the candidate new coordinates and tell them to move again. This goes on for days. Some accounts say the land navigation phase lasts up to 3 weeks. The distances increase, the terrain gets harder, the rucksack gets heavier. And through all of it, the cadre says nothing. That silence is the test. Candidates who need to know where they stand mentally break down. The guy who needs a pat on the back, who needs someone to tell him he's doing a good job, who needs a clear finish line to push toward, that guy will quit. Not because his body gives out, but because his mind cannot handle operating in the absence of feedback. He needs someone else to define success for him, and nobody in Delta is going to do that. The candidates who survive this are the ones who can define their own standard internally. They don't need external validation. They set their own pace, they manage their own psychology, and they keep moving because they've decided to keep moving, not because someone told them to. If you're getting value from this breakdown, subscribe. We cover the psychology, tactics, and technology behind elite military operations every week. Now let's talk about why this connects to personality type. Former operators and psychologists who have studied the unit describe the personality distribution inside Delta as disproportionately introverted. This isn't speculation from internet forums. This comes from accounts by people who served inside the organization. The connection makes sense when you think about what introversion actually means. Introverts recharge through solitude. They're naturally comfortable with silence and isolation. They tend to process information internally before speaking, which means they're less likely to say something impulsive that compromises a mission. They don't need social interaction to feel confident, which means they can sit in a hide site for 72 hours watching a target building without losing focus or becoming psychologically unstable. Several former operators have described the overlap with INTJ and INTP personality types on the Myers-Briggs framework. Now, Myers-Briggs is not a clinical tool, and the military doesn't use it for selection. But the pattern is interesting. Both INTJ and INTP types are characterized by independent thinking, comfort with complex problems, low need for social validation, and a tendency to question authority and conventional approaches. These are exactly the traits that the MMPI screening and the selection process are designed to identify. But here's a critical distinction. Delta is not selecting for intelligence in the traditional sense. They're not looking for the highest IQ in the room. What they're screening for is practical problem solving under extreme physical and psychological stress. The land navigation phases are a perfect example. There is no single correct route between 2 points in the Appalachian Mountains. The terrain changes, the weather shifts, the map may not perfectly match reality on the ground. A rigid planner who has mapped out the optimal route will fail when he hits a gorge that's not on the map. The adaptive problem solver, the one who can reevaluate in real time, accept incomplete information, and improvise a new solution while carrying 70 pounds on his back and running on 3 hours of sleep, that's the candidate who makes it. Pete Blaber called this thinking in 3 dimensions. Not just evaluating the terrain in front of you, but simultaneously considering weather, fatigue, time, alternative routes, and your own physical limits, all while maintaining the emotional control to not panic when things go wrong. This is not a physical skill. This is a cognitive and psychological skill that no amount of gym time can develop. And then there's emotional control. This might be the most underestimated factor in Delta selection. During certain phases of the process, candidates are deliberately provoked. Cadre members will deliver contradictory instructions. They'll change the rules without warning. They'll create situations designed specifically to trigger frustration, anger, or panic. The standard inside the unit is often described with the phrase, "control your response to emotions." This doesn't mean operators don't feel anger or fear or frustration. They feel all of those things. The difference is that they can process those emotions without letting them drive their behavior. The candidate who snaps at a cadre member, who argues with contradictory instructions, who shows visible frustration when the goalposts move, that candidate has just revealed that his emotions control him, not the other way around. In combat, this is the difference between life and death. An operator who loses emotional control in the middle of a hostage rescue, or a covert reconnaissance mission will get people killed. Delta needs operators who can receive devastating news, process it internally, and continue executing the mission. The gray man doesn't just blend into his environment physically, he controls his emotional environment internally. So let's bring this all together. The personality profile Delta actually selects for is a specific combination of traits that most people would never associate with an elite soldier. Gray man presence, the ability to blend into any environment without drawing attention. Tolerance for ambiguity, the ability to operate effectively when the rules are unclear, the feedback is absent, and the situation is constantly changing. Emotional control, the ability to process extreme stress without letting it drive behavior. Independent judgment, the ability to make decisions alone, without waiting for orders or seeking approval. Introversion, or at least comfort with isolation and silence. Low need for external validation, the ability to perform at a high level without needing praise, recognition, or credit. Every single one of these traits maps directly to an operational requirement. The gray man can run source networks in hostile cities. The ambiguity-tolerant operator can execute missions where the intelligence is incomplete and the situation is fluid. The emotionally controlled operator can function under fire without freezing or panicking. The independent thinker can operate behind enemy lines with no communication for days or weeks. The introvert can maintain operational security because he doesn't feel the need to talk about what he does. This is why the best ranger in the army would not automatically make a good Delta operator. The skills that make someone exceptional in a ranger battalion, physical dominance, aggressive leadership, leading from the front, those are different skills than what Delta requires. A ranger leads a team of 30 soldiers through a direct action raid. A Delta operator might spend 6 months building a human intelligence network in a denied area, operating alone, speaking a foreign language, and never once looking like a soldier.